You are listening to Eastman's Flycast, an adventure fly fishing specific podcast covering travel, tactics, and next level insight. Now your host, Brian Barney.
Hey, what's happening, guys? We've got a brand new Eastman's Flycast for you. So this week on the podcast, I have one of my favorite people on, Dan Pickar. Dan has worked for Eastman's, and throughout the last handful of years, we've become good friends, and I just love chatting with him. Fun to get him on the Flycast and talk in-depth fly fishing. Dan grew up fishing in Montana, and now he lives and resides in Wyoming, and he's just getting the most out of those Wyoming waters. That Wyoming has some great fly fishing. Dan's been having these great adventures, and so we talk about it on the podcast. And Dan, he keeps it simple, and he catches fish. He's just got a great attitude, and I really enjoyed the podcast, and I know you guys are going to enjoy it too. I want to thank our sponsor, Avid Max. You can reach them at avidmax.com, and they're an internet retail store. They have absolutely everything for fly fishing, including everything for Euro nymphing, rods and reels, fly lines. Boy, I've been loving that new that Rio Streamer Max. Gosh, is that a good line for streamers? You can get leaders and tippets. You can get tools and tackle, wading gears. I saw some great sale prices on waders on their website. If you fit that size, you can get more than half off on some of those waders. And they have a great clearance section. So you can look through there and get some really good deals on fly fishing apparel and bags. And I saw all kinds of things for sale. You can get everything for fly tying, materials, hooks, tools, and vices. They have watercrafts, which I need to get another single-man pontoon boat. Those things are just awesome for covering water. They have things for camping and hiking. I saw an MRS tent on there, or actually 3 of them that were on sale. That's a great high-quality tent. You can get everything for photo and travel, including bags and dry bags, things of that nature. They have dog gear there, beds and toys, dog bowls, like everything you could need for your dog, and then great apparel. And the thing I'm most impressed about this website is just they have such a selection of gear. They have absolutely everything on there. You can also shop by brand. They have like a real user-friendly website where you can skew your results to find exactly what you're looking for. So if you're in the market for any new fly fishing gear, make sure to check out Avid Max. You can find them at avidmax.com. You can get 10% off by using the promo code Eastmans10. So again, 10% off if you're in the market for anything that has to do with fishing, camping, photo, watercraft, dogs. Make sure to check them out. We really appreciate their support. So avidmax.com. And with that, I also want to thank Eastmans for their support of this podcast. Make sure to check out my other hunting-specific podcast, Eastmans Elevated. You can find it anywhere you get podcasts. This week, I have a solo episode where I recap the last couple hunts. It's failure is the building blocks to success. So just a couple days ago, I missed a giant buck. Right off a cliff, right like I wanted him. It was at the end of a 5-day hunt. Finally found the one I wanted and missed him. So I talk about that miss, and I talk about picking myself up and going back for more, and kind of my attitude and where I'm at. It may be more of a therapy session than a podcast, but if you like the solo podcast, it's a good one. So check that out. Check out everything we have going on over there at Eastman's, the magazines, Eastman's Bow Hunting Journal, Eastman's Hunting Journal. You can check out videos on Beyond the Grid on YouTube, and really appreciate their support. So let's get right into this. My buddy Dan Pickar talking Wyoming fly fishing. Eastman's Flycast. I'm your host, Brian Barney. Here we go. So I've got Dan Pickar here. Dan, you have been making the most out of summer. You've been fly fishing a bunch over there in Wyoming.
Oh yeah, no, if I'm not bow hunting something, I'm usually fishing or taking somebody fly fishing or whatever.
Man, well, you grew up in Montana. Is fly fishing something you've always done in the summer times?
Yeah, I guess me and my brother were kind of a classic case of we watched A River Runs Through It when we were 6 or 7, and my grandfather actually was in that movie, and my dad was too. He owned the steam locomotive.
Oh,
Uh,
wow.
the train. It was the 75, and he was in a number of different movies. And so when we were kids, A River Runs Through It was probably one of our favorite movies. So we got started young, both of us, and our dad was just fantastic at taking us fishing, and grew up fishing on small creeks, big boulders, brook trout, just phenomenal fishing. So small creeks and then high mountain lakes. We never really did fish rivers much. We never had a drift boat or a raft for that matter. And so we had canoes, and we would fish mountain lakes in canoes where we could drive to, and fish grayling a lot. Oddly enough, up in northwest Montana, that's kind of what we like to fish for and hunted, was grayling in lakes. And yeah, so a little bit different, but started, yeah, super young in life. Those 7'6" old Eagle Claw fiberglass yellow, super slow action fly rods.
I know him well.
And Fluger medalist reels. That's what we grew up on.
Man, that is so cool. It's a great way to grow up as a kid, and we just fall in love with the outdoors. And that movie, The River Runs Through It, like, what a classic movie. And I hear some people blame that it, brought more people to fly fishing. But, even in high pressure day and age, you can just find your own experience. You can find your own fish. It's just about time on the water. But that river runs through it. Man, did they catch some nice trout in that thing. Like all like 5 to 12 pound fish, and fighting them through the rapids. And it just it made it look really cool, or I guess planted the seed. And I think similar to me is that, I grew up Western Washington fishing, not with a fly rod, but, spinning tackle and fishing for salmon and steelhead and things, and kind of grew up that way. But yeah, I don't know if it was the river runs through it, but there was just something about fly fishing that I just had to get into.
Yeah, yeah. Brian, I think it goes back to bow hunting and just our personalities, and it's our personality type that, number one, we love a good challenge. We love to challenge ourselves, because when you challenge yourself, and sometimes you fail, sometimes you succeed, and you just grow as a person. I think we just gravitate towards activities that are like that. And I think it's just how we're wired from the beginning.
Oh, that's a good point. Yeah, I think you're spot on. Man, you have been exploring some of those Wyoming rivers. Some of those photos, from this summer, from your adventures, are just amazing. Caught some really nice trout and some really great scenery. Wyoming offers a lot for fly fishermen, doesn't it?
Oh my gosh. Once I moved to Wyoming, I haven't really looked back to Montana. Because there's so much opportunity here, and there's so much good fishing and a variety of, we don't have the lakes as much, but we do have plenty, in the Beartooth or the Wind Rivers and the Bighorn Mountains. There's enough lakes if you're a lake guy, but all the creeks and the rivers here, and just the variety. And, one of the first years I was here, I spent a summer just hunting golden trout, and just finding them in lakes, and seeing how big of them I could catch. And yeah, it's just so fun. And I guess the best way to put it is just fishing frantically. Like, any chance I can get in the spring, summer, or even fall too, I'll get out on the river at least, or find some creek and go fishing. And if I'm not fishing myself, I'm taking Eva, my wife, who she's getting into it, and she kind of has the bug now. So man, it's a lot of fun down here.
Fishing frantically, like, it's just living a fulfilling life, isn't it? It's like
Yeah.
anytime you have, or any chance you have, and you have free time, it's like I just can't sit at the house. I just have to make the most of it. And even in Montana, I'm just surrounded by rivers and streams and lakes, and it's like if you have a few hours where I don't have to be at work, like, I'm gonna go fishing, I'm gonna go hiking, I'm gonna go make something of it. It's such a fulfilling life. And I think, like, during this quarantine especially, and it hasn't been as bad in Montana, and I'm sure not in Wyoming as well, but ended up spending more time at the house than I normally do, and it kind of, it reiterates that boy, to live a fulfilling life, you really have to keep yourself busy day in, day out, and just fit as much into this living as you can.
Yep, 100%. That's seems like any nowadays that's how I live, and whether I'm working on a car or going fishing or bow hunting and trying to get everything done before fall, and yeah, it's just go go go. And the scary thing about it, Brian, which as I'm getting older, I'm not like an old timer or anything, but the busier that I am and the more that I do, the faster time goes, and man, the years are just ticking by, it seems like.
Oh, that is the truth, man. Yeah, the busier you are, the quicker it goes. That's exactly right. Yeah, they click off pretty quick. Yeah, it's about trying to soak up as much as we can and enjoy
Exactly.
it. But yeah, you do a good job of that. And fishing's like such a great endeavor because it is challenging, fulfilling. You're out in nature and the being out on those rivers, you can just go have an adventure and you don't need to plan for a week or have you don't even need an entire day off. So it can just be an afternoon or sticking the drift boat in, and it's always worth it. Like even if the fishing, I always believe the fishing's going to be. Uh, uh, I'm an internal optimist where I always think it's going to be the best day of hunting or the best day of fishing. But
Yeah,
in the end, even if it's not, it's always a good day on the water.
absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah, you
Yeah.
guys have some adventures over there too, with whitewater and then planning your floats. Like these rivers, you got to be careful what you're getting into as well. And when you didn't grow up drifting these rivers, and so you're learning it all, and you're learning a new area. You really have to have good markers on your put ins and your pull outs and also some of the whitewater you come against. Like I know on the Olympic Peninsula there's a lot of whitewater there and it's always changing with the water conditions, so you never quite know what you're getting into. But man, you got to have your wits about you in a drift boat. It can turn bad really quick.
Oh, absolutely. And I would say, over there in Western Washington, or that sea run stuff, that the rivers change even more dramatically over there with rains and the runs and the water. I guess there's big water over there. There's small water too, but over here it's a little more controlled. If we have a thunderstorm or something, rivers will go up or get muddy, and we deal with a lot of rock here too. So I have a raft. I don't have a hard side boat. It seems like most of the rivers here, you need a raft because you need a little bit of forgiveness, because there's, you got small water and funky currents, and there's a lot of things going on, and it's easy to bump off something. If you were to have a hard side boat, like I'm sure you talked to Todd, he's pretty limited to where he can float with that, like on the Bighorn or whatever, but that's about it.
Oh, really? Yeah, you are limited. It's tough to pick, the best overall tool for where you're at. Sounds like where you're at, a raft is a little bit more forgiving and better for some of that whitewater you get into. Like around here in Southwest Montana, we get so much wind, and the rafts they just don't draft as good as like a drift boat will in the water, hold as good on a bank line, And not to say that you can't fish really well out of a raft. You can fish really well out of any fishing craft, but out here, like a low side drift boat is the boat to have. And really, as far as big water, there's not much that we can't run, like maybe the Yellowstone or something like that. We got to be a little bit more careful. Um, but yeah, it's wild how the different boats for the different places you live. Lately, I've been looking into those pontoon boats. Have you ever rode one of those, Dan?
Just the little solo ones, the small ones, but nothing bigger.
Oh, those solo ones. Those things are money for solo trips, aren't they?
Oh yeah, yeah, no, they're fun. We fished with them a lot on lakes growing up. But yeah, even floats like on the Flathead River, we would get on those and run down there. They were perfect.
Yeah, well, my buddy has got like a bigger one that he's running whitewater in now. And talking to those whitewater guys, they like them way more than they like rafts. They just because they draft really well with those two tubes, and so
Yep.
you can they almost row like a drift boat will as it cuts through the current as you back oar and things, and then they just maneuver really good in the whitewater. And then you can also split rocks, which is weird when you head right for a rock and then split it with your pontoons. That's just crazy to me, because I've always been in a normal boat. But man, those things, you can really row those things.
Yeah, yeah. Guy actually picked one up that's more like that. It's more of a raft, but it's just built is kind of the pontoon style. So you have, the bigger tubes on the sides, and the floor is elevated up off the water, and you feel more buoyant. You're up out of there. And like you said, you can really maneuver them a lot better. And it makes everything better for fishing over here, with all the rocks, and it's like a little water skipper, across the water with those things, more so like a drift boat.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's kind of the best of both worlds. I mean, you pay for them. I mean, they're expensive, but man, to have something that's the best of both worlds, I think that is definitely one that is. Otherwise, yeah, because like Todd has his hard side boat, I think it's a Rio, I don't know, whatever's in Helena, and then I have like a little flycraft, and so you use one of those or the other on one type of water, but a pontoon, man, I think you're onto something right there.
Man, they're pretty cool boats for sure. Huh?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's wild. Guy's got a new setup. Man, he loves to fly fish, doesn't he?
Yeah, it's these days it's like, man, he does more fly fishing than hunting, it almost seems like. But
Oh my gosh, he is in love with chasing those browns. He just loves throwing streamers for those
uh,
things and catching big ones. Yeah, you've been with him quite a bit, or been one of his fishing buddies here the last couple years. You guys have been going hard.
oh yeah, exploring new water and fishing hard, and we do it a lot in the summertime. And Mike will get out. I rode him a couple times last year, and so it's fun to go with those guys, and they kind of have their style of fishing, and it's effective, and it's fun to learn something a little bit different, and row them and catch some big fish. There's always something big that's going to snap at a streamer, it seems like.
Yeah, I love that excitement. Good on you getting Mike out and rowing him down the river. He's just a wealth of knowledge. That guy has fly fished forever, but he sure got he sure got his way he thinks about things, and you're not going to change his mind on it. He loves Western fly fishing, but he doesn't like indicators. There's a few quirks with Mike, but it had to be fun rowing
Yep.
down the river with him, right?
Yeah. No, it's kind of fun to watch him, and he has his way of doing it. And yeah, no, it was cool. It was cool to see. He was fishing yesterday and caught a big old brown, so it was fun to see him still out there. And yeah.
Oh, good for him. That's awesome. Yeah. And fishing with new guys, like you said it well, like you pick up tendencies and tips, and you just can't help but learn. And that's like what that correlation that you made between bow hunting and fly fishing is that it's just this ever evolving circle where you're constantly picking up information. And even in doing it 20, 30 years, if you pay attention, you're still going to learn something new every single day. So it's really fun to fish with different people. And like you've been fishing with Todd and Guy and Mike, and I'm sure you pick up things from all these guys, as they're all really good fly fishermen.
Yeah, and like you say, just a little bit different techniques, and there's so many ways to skin a cat. And fly fishing and their techniques is one of them. It's just a good example of everybody does it a little bit different, and their setup's different, and what tippet they're using and everything, and what they believe in. We all have maybe our superstitions, or it's proved it to us a couple times, so we stick with that certain gear or that certain technique a few times. But to be successful on the river, every time you have to be versatile too. Just like with bow hunting, you got to be able to change it up. You got to be able to know when to change it up, know when the right time it is to switch flies or switch a technique, and be able to read the water or read the fish activity and switch accordingly. It's all intertwined, Brian, isn't it? Bow hunting and just life and fishing.
It sure is. Yeah, it sure is. No, I love that, like adapting to the conditions you're given on the river, because that is like it very rarely goes as planned. Like most of the time you're having to adapt, and you said it really well, like knowing when to adapt, knowing when to try something new, knowing when to try a different technique could make the difference between getting them that day or not getting them. And like I pick up those good tips, like just little things, like you're saying. Like I was fishing with my buddy Dylan the other day, and I fish with a bunch of guys throwing streamers, and I pick up different things like every time out, just different ways they do things. But Dylan was using this technique where he'd throw to the bank, and so he'd get his streamer on like the seam of the fast and the slow water, where you want to be fishing that seam line. Now, most of the time, you'd hit that with a streamer, and you'd strip through that seam line and hope to get one off the shelf or off the drop off right there. But what he was doing is he was throwing it to the seam, and then he was throwing this big downstream mend in, and then he was starting to strip. So what it was doing is it was swimming the streamer down the seam line for like 6-7 feet instead of just coming across it. And it was so much more effective, and I had never seen anything like it. It was like blew my mind. I had never seen. So I'm just always picking up little stuff like that, and that one little downstream mend, I know that is going to catch me a lot of fish over the years, and I'd never thought of it, never seen it with all these great fishermen I'd fished with.
Yeah, no, that's a good example of it. It's just what he's being really thorough with the water that he's fishing and covering it all. That's a great example of little tips and little techniques that you can do to just up the chances of catching a big one or just catching numbers wise more.
Yeah. I have fallen in love with throwing those streamers because, like you said, a big fish in action happens, and sometimes it can be slow fishing them, but once you believe in them and you really work the water effective with them, man, oh man, is that fun. You fish a lot of streamers, don't you, Dan?
Yeah, no, it's probably, next to dry fly fishing for me, one of my favorite techniques, for sure. And around here, I've noticed over a couple of years, I just thought of this point that was a little different than Montana, I guess, but you'll fish like a hole with streamers or a stretch of river with streamers, and you'll catch a certain type of fish. Maybe you'll catch, all the browns, and then you maybe dead drift a couple beadhead nymphs, and you'll catch a lot of cutthroats. It's like different species target the different fishing techniques. It's just, what they're liking to eat at the time. I've seen a big correlation with that around Powell, in the Shoshone and some of these waters around here. And so yeah, streamer fishing, I'll do that number one, or if I'm fishing with Guy, I'll let him fish the streamers. And then, I'll do something a little bit different. And it's funny how it targets different species, and you'll catch kind of like a different fish on the same river, same hole.
Oh, that is wild. You're right. Fish seem to have tendencies in the way they like to eat it, and even
Yep.
like a streamer eat. Like sometimes in the spring, you know, dead drifting or like a swinging it, I'll catch more browns, and then the rainbows will eat it on the strip, like when it's moving or something. So you're right. That is wild how different species will kind of target those different styles of eating. And I would even go so far as to say different age classes. Like you seem to catch a similar size, like fishing one way, and then
Yep.
a different age class fishing a different way, where those larger fish just need a bigger meal, where, a lot of times not that you won't see them come up and eat small dry flies if they're really coming off, but they just need more meat in their diet. They're looking for a bigger meal. They're those predatory fish that like to eat bait fish and sculpin and then the bigger dry fly hatches, of course, the hoppers and salmon flies and things of that nature. They'll really key into. But yeah, it's targeting those different age class and those different species. That is wild.
Yeah, and like you say, I mean, usually the browns are good for some good streamer action, and kind of going back to fishing streamers, it's almost like I probably fish equally, dead drifting, under an indicator and streamer fishing, and then I'll fish a little bit different with, maybe streamers or woolly buggers or, something else that I'll swing them in a big hole or, down a big seam. I'll kind of just fish, my nymphs dead without an indicator and just I'll use the current and swing them on the bottom end of my drift, and fish that technique. And that has done well around here. And then you got dry fly. So it almost seems like I do them probably all pretty equally. It depends on the time of year, of course, too, but you definitely, the more versatile you are around here, the better you do. That's for sure.
That's the truth. Yeah, you got to get dialed in on all these different tactics and techniques and be comfortable, confident, and familiar with them. Because you're right. Like in the winter months and early spring and those fish, it's tougher to get them to eat a streamer. And I got a bunch of good fish this spring on streamers. Don't get me wrong, but there's just some days out there where they want it dead drifted. They don't want to
Yep.
move far from it, and it's like where that nymphing is super effective, and being dialed in on your nymphing techniques. And there's so much to it. It isn't just the bugs that you tie on, but it's your leader length and your weight. So you're ticking the bottom, but not dragging the bottom, so you're getting that good drift all the way through there. But yeah, it's honing in on all those techniques so you can adapt and evolve on the water because you've got all these different techniques and tactics that you can use. And I mean, fish just love to eat a nymph setup. There's just no getting around it, and you can catch a lot of nice fish off them. So you have to have that in your back pocket. But there again, big fish like to eat bait fish and streamers, and sometimes they're on the bite, whether it's white or whether it's black. There's a certain tactic that fits each day you're fishing, and it's your job to try to figure out what that is. And so yeah, you got to be proficient in all of those techniques. And it seems dry flies are really technical. It's tough to get a drag free drift, and it's tough to lay that fly where you want to and really hunt those heads to those fish that are coming up. And it seems like it takes me a little while to get used to that again, used to putting that fly in there, used to throwing that salmon fly. Same thing with the streamer. The first time out, I'm a little clunky, making my casts and swinging it or drifting it, or I'm hung up on the bottom. It takes a little bit to get in rhythm with the technique you're using and the water you're fishing, it seems.
Yep. Yep. No, for sure. And, dry flies, it's probably the same as up there. You start with salmon flies early, but you get some dry fly action in March and into April, May, and to the summer, and then you have hoppers. So I guess you fish them enough, but man, yeah, it's just totally different. And I've taken some new people fly fishing and floating down, and I forget, you kind of take it for granted now, but how difficult it is to get a good drift with a dry fly on a river or a small creek with all the changing currents and runs and riffles and pocket water. And yeah, it's a whole different type of fishing and a whole different level of skill set that you need to have to present that fly perfectly. And luckily, a lot of the water around here, it gets fish, but I was just going to say that the fish don't get pressured enough where you can have, a less than perfect drift and still do well on the dry fly.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I hear you that presentation is so important, and some days it doesn't matter. It can be dragon, it can be, you catch those magical days where they want to eat it, and it doesn't matter how you give it to them. But definitely
Yeah.
that presentation and the experienced angler, they just catch more fish and get more eats than a beginner. Like you say, they miss a lot of the water, don't read it quite the same, and so like I feel for those guides. It's got to be tough when you get some of those new fly fishermen and it's not going off or they're not eating it real well. Like trying to get that person into some good fishing, it would be tough because I know like fishing my girls and they're getting really good at the cast, the drift, the hook set. But it's still not like an experienced angler. They're 16 and 12 and they've been doing it for a long time, but it just takes a while until they get that, almost like bow hunting, that killer instinct. It just takes a
Yep.
little bit of time. And so I try to really pick and choose the days that I know are going to be good, where they're going to get a bunch of eats and a bunch of action and catch fish, no matter if they make mistakes on their presentation or their hook set or what, the fishing will overcome, kind of their shortcomings. But it is interesting fishing with different guys. You tend to take it for granted your fly fishing skill, experience, and knowledge, that you've built over the last 20 years. You can really appreciate it when you go with new fly fishermen. You're trying to get them into fish.
Yep, absolutely. And I think that kind of brings up a good point that if you really want to accelerate your game and just be better all around, fish with as many different people that have experience as possible. I mean, that's the best way to learn is from experience from others and paying attention to what they're doing and watching what, how they're fighting a fish all the way down to presenting a fly. And like you say, there's so much to learn out there from guys that do it a little bit different than the next guys.
Well, and it's our job too when we take people out, like when I take my dad out or when I take my daughters or whoever it is, buddies, friends. Like it's my job, I know these are my home rivers, and so I fish them a lot, and so it's my job to make sure everybody gets into fish. Like you want to be a good fishing partner too. You want to share that knowledge and share your knowledge of the runs, and not race to the best part of every hole to fish it out and catch all the fish before your buddy gets there. Like you want to go out and have fun and have laughs and fish really hard together, but you want everybody to get into fish.
Oh yeah, for sure, for sure.
Yeah, I love seeing my dad get into him. Kind of like you were talking, Mike. He loves to fly fish and he's good at it too. But I just love getting him on the water and seeing him get into him and get excited. Or it seems like every time we stop, I like to give Dad like the best part of the run, and I'll go walk up and work the head of the run. Whatever the case is. But yeah, I love seeing other people catch fish and get excited. That's fun.
Yeah, no, that's kind of what I've been doing this last couple of years with my wife, Eva. She hadn't really fished too much before she met me, and so it seems like I'm rowing the boat. That's all I do now is row the boat for her. But I have just as much fun doing that and teaching her and watching her fish, and she's kind of done the spin casting and chucking panther martins and stuff like that. She hasn't got quite into fly fishing yet, because I just want her to build some confidence catching fish, and then we'll move into fly fishing. But I mean, she is just absolutely obsessed with it, like has to fish as much as she can and just loves it right now. And so that's the biggest thing for me is watching her fish and seeing her have all the fun. And she's always like, "Oh no, you should fish. And I'm like, "No, I've caught plenty of fish. I don't need to fish today." And she's like, "Okay, well, you don't have to talk me into it. I'll keep fishing."
Yeah, that's cool. I love that too. I love rowing that river for people. And yeah, a lot of times I just want to see them get into fish, and it's like, oh no, I'll stop down here and work a run down at the bottom. I'll get a couple out of that thing. Don't worry about it. You keep fishing that front, because there's nothing finer than standing up in the front of a boat and throwing at that bank line. It's just such a great way to fish the river.
Yep, for sure, for sure. And what it's really made me realize is, watching her chuck lures, and her, she slays them on spinners or whatever. And I just have to shake my head, because sometimes, I think we overthink how smart these trout are, because you're like, why would they attack a lure like that? It doesn't resemble anything in their diet. There's no, really, really flashy food sources that they're, eating like that. And it kind of made me rethink my whole tactic on fly fishing again. And so what I've gone back to are some of the simplest, oldest patterns out there, and they still work incredibly. Like, I still fish plain woolly buggers a lot. They're not fancy. They've been around a long time, but man, they're still incredibly effective. And so just that, like taking her spin fishing, has given me yet another perspective on fishing as a whole, and fly fishing as well, and change up my tactics a little bit, because man, I don't really know of too many guys that fish woolly buggers anymore, like standard woolly buggers.
Man, you're exactly right. And even like little changes like on our river out here will make the difference. Like fishing like a smaller woolly bugger, like a size
Yep.
12. Like I fished this tiny one, and man, those fish just love to eat that thing. Or a tiny little woolly bugger, and I throw like some maroon in it, in the tail and kind of in the body, And man, they love to eat it. And you're right, we give these fish way too much credit. We think about them way more than they think about us. They're just acting on instincts. They've got a little tiny pea brain, and they eat what looks like food, and they don't eat what doesn't look like food, and they don't want to be caught. But through those instincts, it's like they get really good behaviors that make them tough to catch. And you're right about those spinners, like those chunks of metal, or even like as a kid fishing these lakes, and we'd use like this trolling gear of all these flashers and spinners and all this. It looks like you're trolling around a car behind the dang boat, and those fish will eat that stupid thing. And I know like the flash does look like a bait fish or like a rainbow, or maybe it just grabs their attention where it's instinctual to eat that when it comes by them or whatever. But yeah, it is wild what those fish will eat and what they won't. And you're right, we overthink it way too much. Those simple patterns, I just like patterns that look fishy in the water, that have a lot of movement to them or a lot of life to them. And once you catch a fish on a pattern, that pattern is solid. Like that fish did not eat it by accident. So, woolly bugger has, it's been one of the most popular flies over the years, and it's kind of gone out of style. Like you say, you won't find many woolly buggers in guys' boxes. Now it's all double articulating, and it's gotten we've overcomplicated it. But if there's a pattern that you catch fish on, it's like, pay attention to that pattern. It was not an accident that fish ate that pattern. And if that fish will eat it, the next fish will, because it's instinctual. They see it. It looks like something that's food, and they eat it. So yeah, I think you're spot on, Dan. I think we overthink it. And I know, I can go into the fly shop and buy these fancy flies, and pretty much I'm buying the flies that look good to me. But that's not saying that they look good to the fish. And some of these fancy patterns, you'll fish them and you just won't catch anything off them. So I think it's so important to try new patterns. But I think it's like, work through your box of flies, and when you find one that really works, that gets to be your solid pattern, your solid go-to. Like my solid streamer right now is this and I've got ones in every different color that I like, but this little, it's called a mini dragon, or I think it's called a mini sex dragon or some stupid name, but it's a mini dragon, and it's this black, but it's a real small articulating fly in black and has a lot of movement. And those fish just eat that dang fly. It doesn't matter on what conditions, what the water looks like, what the day is. If I tie on that black streamer and stick it where fish live, fish eat that thing. So it is like really paying attention to those patterns that work, because I can tie on the same size black fly, a different pattern, and they just won't eat it as well or attack it. But that mini dragon, the profile on it must just be right, where it looks like a sculpin, or it looks like a bait fish when it swims, and those fish just eat that thing like your woolly bugger.
Yep. No, exactly. And that's what it's all about, is finding what they really key in on. And if you can find a fly like that they key in on it all summer, or, at least for a season or a part of a season, then, I mean, that's huge. That takes a lot of the guesswork out of it. That you can always go back to that and have action. And thinking a little bit about down here too, having a pattern that will catch you all of the species, because all our rivers, they kind of have everything from cutthroats, rainbows, cutbows, brown trout, brook trout. And so kind of going back to, one fly works for one species, or one technique works for one species and not the other. What I've found that has worked for multiple species across the board, and right back to the woolly bugger. And like you said, the small ones, which you don't see anymore, the size 12s, maybe even to a 14, that I've made some really small ones. And if you can find a fly like that is consistent, then, I mean, you've kind of got it made.
Oh, I've got that little leech I tie in a size 12, little beadhead one that just kills them out here. I got to give you a handful of those the next time I see you, or go try those out down on your water. Yeah, it also seems like the best days of fishing are when you really key into what's going on in the river, where you're fishing, where there's a hatch coming off, and then I like to have a pattern for each hatch, and through fishing whatever it is, brown drakes, you get to fish a few different patterns, find what the fish like, and you kind of develop your brown drake pattern, or you develop your salmon fly or your grasshopper pattern or whatever it is, and fish are going to eat it when the hatch is going off, and then being able to key into some of these hatches, or even nymphs for that matter, like that green serendipity on this river just kills them, and you can hardly buy that fly anymore because it's a simple 3-4 step fly with a little deer hair on the top, and some yarn that's twisted up and wrapped around as a body, but it represents these caddis and these fish. Like some days you can't catch a fish, and all of a sudden you tie on one of those serendipities and you'll just kill them, and so it's finding those patterns, but also those patterns that tie to the hatches that go off on your rivers. That's where I do really well.
Yep. Yep. And yeah, it's all a little bit different. That's what makes it difficult, is that the hatches, it seems like they change obviously so much throughout the year, and you might be good to go for a week or two on one type where, like you're saying, the green serendipity is killing it, and then a couple of weeks later they won't touch it. And that kind of goes back to being able to be versatile and be able to have an open mind and look at things at a broad range to be able to change and evolve your techniques to find what's working at the time. I think that right there is what really takes you to the next level of being a fly fisherman, is the ability to change like that and key in on specifics like that.
Yeah, spot on. Well, and more time on the water too, right? Like
Oh,
lately I've been so busy, with work and getting everything done, and getting ready for hunting season, and I still, like, when I get an afternoon or get a day and want to go fishing. Like last year our hoppers just went off, and this year hoppers have been good, and I've been seeing, a lot of my buddies have been telling me, oh, you got to get out, hoppers are great, and they land a big fish, and so it's like, okay, Friday I'm going, and I haven't quite hit it right yet with the timing, whether it's the water, the sun conditions, not much wind pushing those hoppers, or they're just not as many hoppers. Like I just haven't hit it right yet, and I think it's all just the day. Like I need to spend more time on the water. If you can spend 2-3 days in a row on the water, it seems like you can really get keyed into what's going on. But when you just have a random day here and there, and you're trying to time from years past, I just haven't hit it right this year on hoppers yet. I've caught some fish and had some decent days, but compared to last year, it was like every day you went out and threw those hoppers, you were landing 20, 30 fish, and you saw some really good ones. And I just haven't seen that this year. But it is just time on the water. The more time you spend on those systems, the better you get to know them.
Yep, for sure, for sure. It kind of reminds me of last year. A couple of my guide buddies over there, they were having 30 fish days on hoppers like the end of September last year when I was elk hunting over there. And I was like, what are you serious? And they were telling me about it, and just like a hopper hatch, I guess, of, once every 30 years. It was that insane over there.
Yeah, your guide buddy Jared kills them, doesn't he?
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
That guy is fishy. Yeah, I got to you connected me with him. And I did get down to Idaho and fish with him down there. Just a super guy, so fishy, loves to elk hunt. It was really fun to fish with, and
Oh,
we've kept
good.
in touch all summer long, and he's been killing them on Hebkin, and every time we talk, I'll say, "Oh yeah, this is going off on the Madison," and like the last time I talked to him, he says, "Oh yeah, I've been fishing it in the afternoons." But that guy is so fishy. Yeah, he's a great guy to fish with. So yeah, like going back to what you were saying, he was killing them last September on hoppers, I bet.
Yeah, yeah. No, he's a great guy. He's a wealth of knowledge too, and comes from, the West Coast, and his range of expertise on, man, so many different species, from silver salmon, the steelhead, of course, and everything trout wise. What a wealth of knowledge, and I'm glad you guys were able to connect. He's a great dude for sure. I
Oh,
love
a
him.
great dude. Yeah, I've really enjoyed getting to know him. So yeah, thanks for connecting us. Yeah, we're gonna get out fishing a lot more. But yeah, that you've been steelheading with him and fly fishing with him. Yeah, that guy, he just spends so much time on the water, and those guys that spend that much time are an absolute wealth of knowledge.
Yep, yep. And I was talking to him about that because I mean that kid he's guiding from basically man like January to the end of November. He has December off.
Yeah, guy's nuts, isn't he? He's got a guide,
Yeah,
I mean, 150, 200 days a year, something like that. Yeah. And then his
I,
days off, he's fishing.
exactly, exactly. I mean, that's the pure passion right there, which I think is hard to find. For a guide, like it seems like a lot of guides that I know, they get burned out, and I would get burned out with that many days of fishing a year, I think too. But the passion that guy has for trout and just fish in general and guiding is just incredible. It's inspiring to me.
Me too. Yeah, he's got the sickness and he's got it bad.
Hmm. Exactly, exactly.
Well, Dan, this has been really fun. Like, we don't get together and talk fly fishing too much. It's usually we get together and talk bow hunting, but I'm glad you're taking full advantage of where you live there in Wyoming, and I see you're fishing just absolutely nonstop. So one of these days we got to get together during these summer months and go fish some of these rivers, whether it's in around Montana or around Wyoming. But man, I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Always welcome down here. And, I know how it is. Summer's so darn busy. It's hard for me to leave too. But, yeah, we'll have to do it for sure. It's always good talking with you, Brian. And yeah, this is our first fly fishing conversation.
Yeah, that's right. Well, gosh, uh, Todd's just been killing me out there with his fly fishing pictures. He sent me a bunch yesterday too, and he says, "Oh yeah, they're eating good." And he sent me this picture of the brown that he caught, this 24-inch brown. It was kind of long and skinny, but what a specimen! And then just this rainbow that had to weigh 5-6 pounds. So he's been killing it, making the most out of summer down there as well.
Oh yeah, no, for sure. I get out with him a few times in the summer, and well, probably more than a few times. But yeah, he's a lot of fun to fish with, and he fishes just as much or more than anybody else that I know. So
So cool.
we all have the bug in the office.
Yeah, that's for sure. That's for sure. Well, thank you, sir. I appreciate it. We'll talk to you soon.
Yeah, my pleasure, Brian. Sounds good.
All right, guys, that's a wrap. Fun conversation with Dan. I really like that guy. And I love that he's so into fly fishing, too. I got to get out on the water with him. I have got to get down to Wyoming. That place just fishes so good. I have got more pictures of big fish from Dan and Todd this summer, like just hitting all those great rivers down there. Yeah, I love Montana. I love my home. I love the fly fishing around here, but I've got to go take advantage of some of that Wyoming fly fishing. So I'm definitely going to get over there. I'd like to get over in the spring and next summer. Even the winter months, I love to go fly fishing some of these different systems. But definitely next spring and summer, I have got to make time and get out there. Um, we all need to take advantage of that Wyoming fly fishing. There's not as much pressure and there's some big fish. So really cool conversation. I really appreciate Dan coming on. I also want to thank our sponsor. I want to thank Avid Max. You can find their website at avidmax.com and get 10% off by punching in Eastmans 10 in the promo code during checkout. And they just have absolutely everything, a huge selection. Um, gosh, I'm really psyched to pick up a sponsor on the podcast, and so I really appreciate their support and belief in what we're doing over here. So let's make sure to give them some love. And with that, make sure to check out everything we have going on over there at Eastman's. You can check out the other hunting-specific podcasts, Eastman's Elevated. Check out the magazines, Eastman's Bow Hunting Journal, Eastman's Hunting Journal. And we've got some new things in the works. We're going to get a blog up for fly fishing, and we're going to get different guys to record. Matt Suck he's a writer for us there at Eastman's. We're going to get him involved in the blog. He's been helping with the podcast a bunch. Guy Eastman has been fishing like crazy. That guy absolutely loves to throw streamers for big fish in the summertime, and he's been connecting on a bunch of good ones this summer. So I'm sure we'll get some write-ins from him, and we're just gonna continue to try to move into the space of fly fishing here, which I just think is absolutely awesome, and it's going to help the podcast. And so I couldn't be more excited at the future and being part of this company and what we're trying to do in the fly fishing world. So super excited about that. And man, with that, I've got to get out and throw some hoppers here. Been hunting like a madman here lately, but I got to get a day and get out and throw some hoppers and see where I'm at late summer. And then as we start to get into this fall fishing, I'm definitely going to take some days here and there and go throw some streamers in September and October, November. So yeah, super excited at I kind of feel like the fall and the spring and it's kind of like a local season. Pressure gets off the rivers cool down a little bit, so I can't wait to take advantage of it. So thank you guys for all the support of this podcast. I really appreciate it. The downloads and the listens are everything for this podcast, but also the reviews on iTunes or whatever platform you're listening to. It really helps share the podcast to more people. The share on social media. I really appreciate all of it, you guys. And just want to continue to bring you the absolute best information that I can. Getting really fishy people on the podcast and having these in-depth conversations. So I appreciate you guys. And with that, I'll check in with you next week.